Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be taking a little bit of a look of Windsurf. Windsurf is an IDE released by the company Codium. What I've got here is a demo that I put together earlier today where I basically had it try to create a little game for me. The game is very basic. You place turrets, bad guys come in, and I wanted to see kind of like just in general what the flow of working is. Initially, I wasn't really a fan of the way that they kind of do their file generation. But over time, I actually got used to it because instead of having to approve each one, the AI is just working ahead here. It's like working through all of the things that need to happen. And then you can go and kind of review the files after it's kind of done. Where if you take a look at like Klein or Rucline, a lot of times you're approving one file at a time, or you could set auto approval on. But in general, this was a little bit of a shock for me. I felt less in control of what I wanted to actually have happen here. And then what I found here is when they said, "Hey, I want to run this terminal command," I was actually expecting it to use the terminal built into the IDE, not run in like this background setting. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Ultimately, this first version failed pretty miserably. It didn't do what I wanted it to do. You couldn't actually place a turret or anything. So I ended up asking it some more questions. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit. So this is my dude. He's walking around now. This is after a few iterations. Once this turret cooldown goes down, I can actually drop a turret, and the turret does very little damage. But it was interesting. Like it was a interesting experience. I did play around with a bunch more, so you can see some of the time that I actually did, like digging into it, and I actually did use it in some larger code bases as well. But first, let's talk a little bit about this company. So this is one of the first articles I found. That in January 20th or January 30th of 2024, they raised 65 million to bring generative AI to software coding. And then, not long after that, they actually raised a $150 million Series C, reaching a 1.25 billion valuation. That is just astounding to me based on what I saw in the IDE, because Visual Studio Code is a free service, a free IDE, and with extensions, you can basically get all the functionality that I was finding in Windsurf. So I started trying to understand a little bit more about the people that make up Codium. And what I found is if I had to guess, I couldn't find the exact number, but they have a little over 100 people working at Codium. Now this result shows 477, but I tried to go through and count. If you go to like 488, for example, you start getting people with like skills, not their actual like current job. So just to kind of put that in perspective. So the best guess I have is 139 people currently working at Codium. I could be way off on that. That's totally speculation. But it is theoretically a fairly large company, which does make sense because of the $150 million raise that they did. So that kind of fits for me. They were founded by this individual, Viren Mohan, whose background really is in autonomy infrastructure. He worked at a company called Neuro, which I'm unfamiliar with. He did spend 3 months as an intern at Databricks, which is a company I'm very familiar with, and an intern at a few other companies, Cora and Cloudian. So fairly new to the industry. But I'm guessing here, if you look at this, yes, he came from a background of MIT. So very high educational background, probably super sharp engineer. And one of the other co-founders was Douglas Chen. Douglas Chen actually spent some time as a machine learning engineer at Facebook and has been spending the last 3 years, 8 months at Codium. Was a software engineer at Facebook and then an intern at SpaceX. Also went to MIT with an incredible GPA. So pretty solid founders, very young in their career, but this seems like they've unlocked something that clearly has a lot of demand to be able to drive the valuation they're getting now. So I wanted to look at, usually when I see people that are kind of like newer in the industry, one of the things I want to look at is kind of what employees think of the company itself. And Codium is, there's only 18 reviews, but to have 100% approval and just an incredible 100% recommendation of friend and a 5-star rating for a team that's very new, like is incredible. Like they've done an incredible job building a team. And if you look at this, like the cons are what you'd expect. Like it's a fast growing startup. And there are just gonna always be people that just don't work in that environment well. And look at this. So here, for example, in office 5 times a week, etc. Like they want food for all employees. So their advice is provide food to all employees every day. That's their advice. That means the company is doing something right if the complaint is they want more food in the office. So anyway, this is the Windsurf editor. And I started digging into this a few days ago. And as I was getting into it, like the first thing that I noticed before I even downloaded it was like, this has to be a fork of VS Code. And it turns out it is. And then the other thing is like, why wouldn't they just build an extension for VS Code? Because that was a little bit confusing to me. But it actually turns out they did actually build Codium VS Code extensions, which allow for things in this video here that actually shows like autocomplete, which seem seem pretty good actually. I'm currently using GitHub Copilot, but I love the idea of being able to switch out autocomplete and other AI functionality in VS Code because that's my primary IDE. Another one of the things that they talk about is this built-in flow state. And this flow state, I love the way they've kind of put this, to be honest, because they describe it as the ways humans are meant to work with AI. So flows equal agents plus copilot. And, when I first was reading some of the pricing things, for example, I was very confused about the flow action credits. So it took me a little bit to kind of understand, what are the user prompt credits, because those kind of make sense. I'm asking a question, I'm prompting ChatGPT, I'm prompting Claude. And as I got into it a little bit more, it started to make a lot more sense what a flow actually was. So initially, I was thinking there'd be no reason for me to change from VS Code. But then as I got to thinking about it more, I stepped away from the computer. I started thinking, I'm paying a pretty decent amount in credits to OpenRouter and to Claude. Not so much DeepSeek because they're pretty cheap. So much so that like it could make sense for me to use the Pro version of this because I can get a lot of the functionality at a hopefully a discounted price. I don't really exactly know what my credit usage would be in this platform, so I'm going to try it for a week. I may find the Pro plan just doesn't give me anywhere near enough, and I'd end up having to go to the Pro Ultimate, and we end up in a situation where the price might not be worth it at that point. But anyway, the pricing here is intriguing to me, and the features that it offers is intriguing, but I haven't decided yet if I'm going to pull the trigger fully and switch over to using this on a day-to-day basis. All right, I'm moving back to the editor. So I actually have the editor open with a project. One of the things I wanted to determine is, can I install things like Klein? And I can. So that was very nice to see. I'll just show you some of the actual controls. So let me go into this game that I actually made. And over here on the right, one of the features that I really, really like is this at mention. Because you can add a file to put the context in there directly. And that is something that I hope Klein and Rucline actually add, because that is a feature that I really, really, really like. Because I can do something like, I can add multiple files and then ask a question about it. They also have the mode, where you can do a write mode, which is, this will default to like writing code, and a chat mode. And this is basically going to allow you to ask questions about the system, similar to the ask mode in Rucline. And then they also have this legacy mode, which I didn't actually play around with too much, but it doesn't allow me to use any of my premium like flow credits or anything like that I've got. Now within the code file itself, there are a few things that you probably noticed up here. One is this explain. So it's very interesting. Like I clicked explain, and for some reason, I think it's because I had my cursor here, it defaulted to explaining about that particular thing. So super nice. I love having that kind of quick action element in there. And just to kind of call this out, you can change your model here as well. And I have played around with Cascade Base. And to be honest, if you're doing like certain things like within the editor that it isn't like writing code, I would use Cascade Base just to save you premium credits. So I'm going to switch to that now to save. So I'm going to, let me just change, I'm going to highlight, let's highlight Game Manager. We're going to hit refactor. Let's just add a print statement just to see how that kind of works as a show. So see, it's kind of interesting. So you've got like, the add doc string in case you want to like document your code. So here we go. We're going to add the doc string directly in there. These are like super nice to have uh, options in there. And then you can accept all the changes or reject. So I can say reject that, reject that. And you do it all in line of the code. Now, one of the things that I've also found is this setting, or this option. If I'm on Windows, so this is the autocomplete trying to kick in. So you can kind of see that it's actually giving more code than what I typically get with like an auto Copilot. Copilot would probably give me something like this, but it actually kind of tried to figure out the context of what I would want to do next. So in this case, it's saying like, hey, why don't we actually draw the current ammo count? Another thing you can do is if you hit Control I, you can say, write me a function to calculate the distance between two vectors. And we're going to go ahead and load that in and just see what happens. So I don't know, like this Control I feature is something that I also really like about Windsurf. The ability to just within the context of where you are, maybe you would do something like this. You say like, tell me what this code does. And it actually ended up putting like comments in there. So I was playing around with like, what can I get this thing to do? So I'm going to go ahead and reject that. Okay, in this quick demo, I just wanted to show this at web. So if I do this at web and I say, I want to see how to load and manage the sprite in Pygame. The at web is also a feature that I would love to come into VS Code. There may already be extensions for this, but the idea that you can go through and just never have to leave your browser to go get documentation for code is also fantastic. It's something that honestly, if I were to get hooked on this could be one of the features why I potentially want to stay working with Windsurf. All right, in this example, I'm using a larger code base. I passed it the shop orders variants py file, and I asked it to kind of analyze that file and suggest improvements. Notice I'm in the chat version here. In this chat version, I actually really did enjoy like kind of what it was recommending. Ultimately, I'm using Claude 3.5 Sonnet, and some of the recommendations it had in here actually weren't feasible. So again, this isn't Windsurf's issue. This is really just an issue with what Sonnet's able to do. But it wasn't a bad workflow here. Very similar to Rookline. In general, I think Windsurf is maybe onto something. I think the editor is great because it's based on like the editor that I use on a day-to-day basis, which is Visual Studio Code. I think it does a great job with new projects. I really do enjoy the ability to switch the different models I want and being able to go to the one that's like the cheap one. I don't know another way to call it, but the Cascade base, which isn't like a premium call. So the one thing I would say I really don't like is the limitation of the models it puts on me. I'm not able to use like local models at all. Like I looked everywhere I could and I couldn't find a single place where I could actually put like local models. All right, that's about it for today. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe. And if you already use Windsurf or are looking to use it, please tell me your experience below. I'm going into this coming week where I'm going to use it as my primary editor, and I'll post an update later on if Windsurf Editor will replace VS Code for me or not. Anyway, until next time, take care, everyone.